Sit with Lexi B.
Macy, how are you?
I am so great, Lexi. It's wonderful to see you.
I know it's been a long time, like pre-pandemic,
It's been,
I feel
I
like.
like to think of it as like a lifetime.
A lifetime.
I was
A
a,
lifetime.
we were both totally different people the last time
Ye-
we saw each other.
Because we hadn't birthed yet.
We hadn't birthed, we hadn't gotten married, or
Yes.
maybe I had gotten married, but like, yeah,
No,
I don't think
maybe.
we'd, yeah, because I got married right before leaving San Francisco, and I actually don't think I saw you right before leaving
No,
San
yeah.
Francisco.
So before marriage,
Yeah,
before
so,
conception, and like bringing children into the
yeah,
world, and then having to raise them.
and having
Girl,
to raise them,
yes,
exactly. Like, it has been a lifetime.
it's been a lifetime. It's been a lifetime. So where are your people from?
Where are my people from? Buckle up because it's
Okay,
a ride.
okay,
So on my dad's side of the family, my people are from East Africa,
okay.
and my family's been here for about 400 years. And in the 70s, my dad and his brothers traced our family history all the way
Wow.
back, not only to our slave ship, the slave ship that we came in on, which came in into Baltimore, but also all the way to our tribe in Africa. So our ancestral last name is Boga.
Oh my God.
And yeah, the earliest ancestor came in to Baltimore, then he went to North Carolina, then he was sold over to Mississippi, and then my grandparents migrated to Chicago during the Great Migration. And on my mom's side of the family, we've also been here for like 400 years.
Hmm.
So my mom is from Tulsa,
Hmm.
and her family history was largely untold and unknown,
Mm.
obviously because we were impacted by the race massacre.
Yeah.
And so it was only in the last few years that I really started digging into that family history. And what prompted it was I was listening to a History Channel podcast about Tulsa burning.
Mm.
And in it, they mentioned one of my ancestors. And I had never heard of him.
Oh.
I knew of his like grandson, who is my great grandfather, Grandpa Renty. My grandmother would also always tell stories about him and how he was wealthy and all these things, but like never connected, right? Because of the experience of my mom and her siblings. But my great grandfather Renty, Warrior A. Renty, was actually one of the largest black landowners in Oklahoma.
Mm.
He received his property through the Dobbs Act
Mm-hmm.
and the land grants. And he was an attorney, he
Mm.
was a newspaper publisher, and horrifically, the United States of America stole a lot of his land to create
Yeah.
the state of Oklahoma.
Yeah.
So that's where my people are from. And we're slowly but surely trying to reclaim that history.
So one, I do want to honor, you said that your family's from East Africa, and girl, you look like it. I would
I
never
know.
unsee it.
I
When
know.
you said it, I was like, whoa,
400 years
that
ago.
is
Isn't that wild?
wild. Like, girl, you look like it.
I
Okay.
know.
That, it all tracks. It all
Yeah.
tracks.
Yeah.
And two, I just wanted to ask you, like, how does it feel to know their names? I was recently in St. Louis, and I found a picture of my great grandmother. So like she is my grandmother's grandmother,
Yeah.
and it's all women lineage to her.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I started crying because I don't think that I realized how emotional it would be to not just have her name, but to literally see her
Yeah.
as she was definitely born a slave. And I was,
Mm-hmm.
and this is a picture of her later in life, and she's in
Yeah.
like this beautiful dress, and the
Right.
early 1900s, like you got to pose a certain way,
Exactly.
and she was wearing a fur. So I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, bouginess elite. I'm here for it, Lizzie
Exactly.
Pearl. I'm here for it, Lizzie
Exactly.
Pearl. But it was very emotional to like physically and visually see her, of like, yo, that's real. How was it for you to like, get to know these names?
So I've always known the names growing up. So on my dad's side of the family, there's a very rich oral history.
Oh, I love that.
And so like my younger son, Eli, his middle name is Solon.
Mm.
And that name has been in my family for hundreds of years.
Mm.
And that his name actually has a interesting and complicated past, the name Solon. Um, so I've always known the names. We've always had the photos, thankfully, on my dad's side and my mom's side of the family. Um, and, it's so interesting because the Met Gala's focus was on, the theme was Black Dandyism.
Yes.
And it was so cool to see photos of people's families. And then I thought back to this photo album that my grandmother put together for me before she died. And it has pictures of my ancestors dressed as dandies, right? And dressed in their finest with the furs, to your
Oh,
point,
yes.
and,
Oh, yes.
the well-tailored suits and garments. And it's, I've always appreciated the fact that my brothers and I have had the privilege of knowing where we
Mm.
come from and who our people
Mm.
are, because that is so uncommon
Right.
for our people, right? And so it's a legacy, and those are stories that we really cherish and steward and make sure that the next generation knows about. And even unearthing the stories that we didn't know. So,
Right.
as it pertains to my mom's side of the family, sadly, most of that generation that has that history has died.
Right.
And so I've been heavily relying on just like whatever I can find on the internet and the
Mhm.
libraries to bring those stories to life, so that not only I know who I am, but also so that my boys will know who they are too.
I love it. I love it. So speaking of your babies,
Yeah.
I want to talk about financial literacy for kids. Macy, on this platform that I've created in the past couple of years, I talk about finances a lot.
Yeah.
And I talk about it a lot because I sincerely believe that if you can really understand finances in the layers of how you can utilize them, it gets you closer to freedom. Instead
Absolutely.
of this idea of I'm just going to work, 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 work,
It's
work,
not
work,
how you
work.
get it.
That's not how things work.
It's
Also,
not.
I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of healing for me as a person who in my early 20s had no idea what finances are, and then had this awakening when I got laid off of like, oh, I need to figure this out, right? And still navigating and figuring it out in the best way, but coming from a place not of scarcity but of curiosity.
Oh, I like that.
The streets say that you are building financial literacy for kids. So tell me about that. Before we get into the babies,
Yeah.
what was your financial literacy growing up?
Complicated.
Okay. Like mine. Well, go ahead, girl. Go ahead. Yes.
And I use that word complicated because my parents did very well for themselves. My dad was the first Black partner at his law firm. On my mom's side of the family, there's a history of wealth. Not that she experienced growing up, but, like I was talking about in previous generations. And on my dad's side of the family, to some extent, there was a history of wealth too. However, my parents both grew up working class. So my dad grew up on the west side of Chicago. My grandfather pushed steel. He worked 3 jobs. My mom grew up in a single parent family on the south side of Chicago in the projects for a little while. And so, in many ways, I'm like a first gen, in terms of having means. And so as a result, my parents so generously wanted to make sure that my brothers and I had an upbringing that was easier than theirs and, for all intents and purposes, better than theirs. And, we rarely heard no in terms of the things that we wanted. And we wanted for nothing. But as a result, I also learned like very unhealthy behaviors as it pertains to money, because there wasn't as much of an emphasis on saving and investing, especially early on, mainly because my parents didn't know about that. Like I remember when they really started investing in the markets, it was because, and when they got a wealth advisor, and it was because my dad's partners were talking about their portfolios, and he was like, tell me about this, and then they were things that, his partners had talked about their entire lives. But it was very new and very foreign. So to my dad and to my parents. And so they didn't really start building their portfolios until they were in like their late 30s, 40s. And then like taxes were always very complicated for us as well, and like very emotional. Like my mom would leave their meetings with their accountants in tears. And so as a result, I wouldn't say I had a traumatic experience with money or traumatic history, but it wasn't healthy. And so those, while my parents obviously did the best they could and with what they had and the experience and knowledge that they had, I quickly learned as an adult that there were things that I needed to unlearn and behaviors that I needed to learn. And so that's the position that I'm coming from with 𝐃𝐨𝐧'𝐭.
That's interesting. I think I had a similar experience growing up with you, or, you know, born and raised in St. Louis, definitely upper middle class, never wanted for anything. I did not realize that you talked about money until I went to college.
Yeah.
When all the kids were talking about money. In college was when I realized that while I did grow up very privileged, I did not want for anything. I have this huge void of lack of understanding of finances and wealth. And so I spent a lot of my early career talking to people, learning, unlearning, because I grew up in a household where it was just like, save your money, which, by the way, that's very important. Save your money in
Yes.
full stop. But as you and I both know, there's a lot more to financial growth than just saving your money. And I didn't.
And saving
No.
your money in the right kind of account, right?
Right. I didn't know.
Yeah,
Right. I was just
exactly.
told, save your money. And I'm like,
Exactly.
underneath the mattress or like in a Wells Fargo. What are we doing? Right.
Exactly.
And I always made this joke to people like, oh, when I have a kid, you go into money boot camp at 3. Like, respectfully, F space camp. You go
Right.
into money camp, right? And by the way, she's enrolled in space camp, so like we love space camp. But
that's
the point is that how do we take the lessons that you and I are learning and that have learned,
Right.
and make sure that our kids don't grow up and are in the college dormitory, you know, eating waffles at 2 a.m. and they're like, wait, what? Because
Exactly.
that's what happened to me. So
Exactly.
what made you come up with this amazing idea of, hey, let's get these babies educated about the coin?
Yeah. So a couple of things. So the first was a few years ago, I joined Bernstein Private Wealth Management, which is a wealth management firm. And they brought me in to not only build new businesses for them as a strategist, but also to create tools to help families have multi-generational conversations about wealth. And my work was primarily focused on not only like the older adult children, which is kind of baffling, like the families, even families with like great wealth aren't necessarily having conversations about wealth with their kids. So they become adults and they're like, I don't really know what's going on. But also some of the tools that I created were also for younger members of families. And so that got me to start thinking like, hey, what can we do for the littles? And then this was also, you know, as Gracie's Corner was blowing up, Miss Rachel, you know, was blowing up, Jules TV, all of this content for kids. And I started thinking to myself, you know, just as we're teaching them like the alphabet, phonics, you know, all of these songs, maybe we have an opportunity to also teach them financial literacy, especially while their minds are so malleable. And then couple that with the fact that we had started 𝐾𝐭 with my son Hollis. And I started to think, you know, if we're teaching him the building blocks of language and reading, we should also be teaching him the foundations and fundamentals and the building blocks of financial literacy. Not necessarily dollars and cents, but the behavior to approach, with which to approach money. And so that's how 𝐃𝐨𝐧'𝐭 was born. It was a confluence of these factors of working in wealth management, teaching my toddler at the time how to read, and then also understanding and seeing where pop culture for toddlers was, and seeing an opportunity to teach them even more skills and life skills using stories, music, and entertainment.
I would like to shout out Gracie's Corner. And fun fact, Gracie's Corner's Money Song is my personal favorite song
Yes, it's great.
on Spotify.
Yes.
I think my daughter prefers the ABC song,
Okay.
which is fine. We also
Yeah,
play
yeah.
that one, but the Gracie Corner Money Song, y'all, is a bop, and I highly recommend it for all.
It is. My son loves the veggie song. Hollis is,
The veggie song is
I love my
also good.
veggies. Yeah.
Also a bop. Also
It is a
bop.
bop.
Also a bop. So when we're thinking about financial literacy for the babies, you said that we're not talking about literal dollars and cents. We're talking about behaviors. I find that so transformative because now that we're grown, I've had to learn.
Yeah.
The hardest lesson that I had to learn with money was stop thinking about physical money and think about behavior and what you want with that behavior.
That's right.
So the fact that you are building something for children to learn that at an early age, so by the time they're 10 and 11 years old, this is not new news. This is just how the world works, I think is so great. What types of behaviors are we trying to teach these babies about money?
Yeah. So, and that's the thing, Lexi, is, by the time they're 10 or 11, I don't want to say it's too late, but their behaviors and the way they think about money has already been pretty much cemented. Because by the time you're at 7, that's when your money behaviors stick, which is like mind blowing to me because most curriculums are focused on like 10, 11, 12-year-olds and then high school. But the behaviors that we're teaching are those that, they translate into any culture. So the idea of earning, the idea of compound interest and waiting, the idea of taking care of your things and your assets, the idea of growing your assets. Those are some of the early behaviors that we're teaching. And then, down the line, the concepts of investing, and not just investing dollars and cents, but the investment of time, talent, intention. So those are some of the primary behaviors that we're covering in this first year.
Let's talk about the investment of time, talent, intention, and energy.
Yes.
Because that was something that I remember when I wrapped my head around the idea that I can always make more money, but I cannot make more time. Girl, the way my life changed.
Yes.
In ways that I don't think people really realize. Like I was using that in spaces, even in social situations of like, is this a good investment of my time?
Yeah.
And I kick myself because I'm like, if I had known that at 12,
Right.
the amount of middle school drama that I would not care about,
Right. Because it's a waste of time.
that could have been used for more impactful things. So
Exactly.
tell me about this investment of time, talent, and energy, because I don't think we discuss that enough, even as adults. Like, forget these kids for 2 seconds, but we don't discuss that enough as adults about how you existing is an investment, and you get to decide actively every day who gets to take a part in your aura.
Yeah, absolutely. And, time is our only finite resource, right? Money, infinite, right? For all intents and purposes. But when it comes to time, we only get 24 hours. And one of my good friends, Zane Asher, who is a host on CNN, broke it down so well. You get 8 hours to sleep. You get 8 hours to work. And then you get 8 hours to work on and do, your X factor things. So the things that you're passionate about, the things that are going to make an impact even outside of your work. And so, first of all, learning how to budget that time and to set an intention with the time is so important. It's like, one of my mentors, 𝐃𝐨𝐧'𝐿 Jones, was one. She and I have conversations about like investing and things like that all the time, just because I'm like, we want your playbook because Eddie and I want to be like you and Jose. But she was telling me, about how she's always approached money, and it's that every cent is an investment. Every dollar you spend, you're investing in something. You're either investing in your growth or you're investing in somebody else's growth, but you're investing nonetheless. And the same thing goes for our time. We're either investing in, our growth, or we're investing in the growth of someone else or something else that may or may not be worth that investment, right? Like time scrolling through Instagram typically isn't, a good investment. Time mentoring while you're pouring into someone else, that is a good investment. That is going to pay dividends. Time dedicated to your children, that is going to pay dividends. Time invested into your business and your career, that is going to pay dividends. And so the key to the investment of time and energy is making sure that we're investing in things that are going to yield fruit in the future.
So then if we're going to talk about time investment and everything else, sis, we got to talk about time investment in who you decide to have children with.
Whew. Yes.
So my direct question to you was that, were you thinking about these concepts when you were actively dating to find a long-term partner? I know that I was, but I wanted to get your opinion on that.
If I'm being candid, no. But I did date with intention. So there's a difference. So I had my non-negotiables, and, we don't need to go into what those are, but one of them, was just that he was a believer, right? And I mean, I've been blessed with a husband who is like the best partner. And in that, not only is he just a great person, a great leader, he also is very smart when it comes to money. And he's also just like insanely smart in general, but especially when it comes to money. And he's had an interesting journey as well. And he picked up a lot of his money behaviors while he was in boarding school and while he was in college, because he went to school with some of the most prominent families in the United States. And so as a result, he was able to have like a front row seat to...
He was picking up little gems. He was picking up little gems at 15. Yeah.
He was. And, he would be on vacation with his friends' families or at their vacation houses and engaging in their dinner time conversations and breakfast conversations about finances, about business, about investing. And he picked up these tips and these gems along the way that he then implemented for himself. And, he has, been one of the driving forces behind making sure our boys adopt positive, healthy money behaviors. And so not only has he taught them, I've also learned a tremendous amount from him because of, the exposure that he had and the decisions that he made. So I got lucky.
Yeah. It's funny. I think that our husbands are very similar in that I remember when I met my husband originally, I didn't know much about him. We were just dating and getting to know each other. But I learned very quickly that he had been playing with investments since he was 10, 11, and 12 years old. Yeah. And of course, my ego, I'm not going to tell him this on the third date, child. But in my head, I was like, noted. Because I was on my money journey of learning about wealth. Yeah. And here this man is like, oh, yeah, and then you do this, and then you do this. And I was like, oh, let me get a notepad out. This is good, right? This is good. This is good stuff.
Right.
So with that said, how are you both now having these conversations with the kids? How does this new venture for you work? What do those lessons look like in real time?
So one big one is patience and earning. So just as with Ella and her story, she's, planting lemon seeds and learning about how she can't just have lemonade on Friday if she plants on Wednesday, right? She has to wait for the trees to grow, and then she can have the lemons, and then she can make the lemonade, and then, eventually she, in the long version of the story, which will come out this summer, she has a lemonade stand and starts her own business, because Ella is about that business. And so part of it, so one big thing that we're learning right now in our home is patience, the idea of earning things. Hollis is currently on an earning journey to get a Buzz Lightyear, which he can only
Wait, you just can't say that. What is a learning journey for a 4-year-old?
What
Tell
is an
me
earning
more.
journey?
Yes. You said Hollis is on an earning journey. And I'm like,
Yes.
wait, Hollis, tell me more. What does this look like?
Yeah. So, Lexi, something that I realized maybe about a year ago was that Hollis was adopting my unhealthy money behaviors and predispositions. And
Even
so
at that young age.
at that young age,
Y'all,
'cause
kids
he's,
are sponges. It's wild.
yeah, and
Wow.
he's like very observant, very smart. And so, we'd always get this like stream of Amazon packages because, hi, we're millennials and we don't go to the store. And oftentimes, it'd be like he needs something, he wants something. All right, we'll just get it. It's not expensive. It's $8. Like, keep it moving. And he wanted, what toy was it? I think it was like a Hot Wheels toy or something. And he was like, can't we just buy it? And I was like, no. Like, what am I? It made me pause and think, like, what are we teaching? What am I teaching? Because Eddie is like, hey, we need to like pump the brakes on this. And I'm like, oh, he's little, it's easy. Blah, blah, blah. And he's like, no, like, what are we teaching him? And it made me realize, like, not only what are we teaching him, what has he already learned? And that brought me back to this interview on Oprah's Super Soul Sunday that I heard where she interviewed Melinda French, Bill Gates' former wife. And this was before I had kids. I was like getting ready, listening to it. And Oprah asked her, how do you say no to your children when the concept of the answer of I can't afford it doesn't work because you're billionaires? And Melinda said, what I tell them is just because we can doesn't mean we should. And that memory came rushing back. And so the first thing that I started saying to Hollis was, just because we can doesn't mean we should. But then, as time went on, like there were more, just like random toys that he wanted. And so I said, okay, if you want it, you can earn it. And earning it is not sucking your thumb for, we're trying to break the habit. So he's been on this earning journey with Buzz Lightyear for a couple of months. He has to go 21 days without sucking his thumb to earn Buzz Lightyear. So we have a calendar tracker. He gets a smiley face for every day that he doesn't suck his thumb. And we've had to restart a few times. It's okay. He's learning. He's on the journey. So he's earned that. He can earn things by, doing his 𝐾𝐿 every day, by regulating his emotions well, by doing, things for others and kind of having that like servant's attitude towards his friends, and being kind and things like that. And so that's how we earn in our house, is by doing the behaviors that we, hope that he adopts in general. And it's not necessarily tied to chores because we think that's something that he should be doing anyway because he's a member of our family. But it's so the earning not only reinforces the things that we want him to pick up anyway, but it also instills a sense of pride for him. So, for instance, last week I took him out for lunch after his soccer practice, and he like scored a goal and he did a great job, and he said, Mama, did I earn it? And I was like, yes, Hollis, you did. And he gets so excited when he earns things. And so that's what his earning journey has been on. And now he like asks, he's like, can I earn it? Can I do it? Can I get it? Can I get it if I do XYZ? And it's really beautiful to see not only that sense of pride, but also that transformation in terms of him understanding that some things take patience, some things take earning, and it's building his character one step at a time.
I love that. I love the concept of the urn. I love what Melinda said. I have replayed that episode time and time
Yeah.
again. Just because we can doesn't mean that we should.
Right.
And then what you said, I think really hit me that I've never thought of yet is that, I think we're around the same age. And so growing up in the 90s, you didn't really have the internet for things just to pop up. So I remember saying, Mom, Dad, I want XYZ. And even if they were totally in support, the amount of effort that we had to do to go get the thing
Right.
versus now, I can just go on an app
Yep.
and it is delivered. And
In a
that's
day.
multiple apps, not just
Yeah.
one app,
Right.
right? When you're cooking and you don't have any more sugar, this idea of like going to ask your neighbor for sugar is void. Girl, if you don't Instacart that and call it a day, right?
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
and as you were talking, I was thinking about, I can only imagine being a child, being your children's age, being my child's age right now, where you may not have the full language to express what is happening, but just watching things just appear.
Right.
Like because you exist, it appears. Versus me as a child, I innately knew that if I wanted something today, the work that it would have to take to get it, even if my parents were in full support.
Yeah.
We need to get in the car. We need to look at schedules. How far is it? What store has it?
Yeah.
Like this could be a multi-day procurement
Oh, yeah.
experience.
Absolutely.
And I can only imagine what children are receiving now where it's like, because they breathe, it comes.
And it doesn't come in 5 days. It comes tomorrow. Or in some cases, it comes that evening. It's instant. And yeah, it's something that Hollis figured out. And we, started adjusting the behaviors for him. And hopefully it's something that we won't have to adjust for Eli because our family has already started implementing these rituals and these behaviors.
In your work, at your day job, if you will, are you also having these conversations about just what does it look like to change the narrative for these kids because of the world that they live in? Like those money conversations are going to have to be different.
Yeah, they do. So 𝐸₂Kids is my day job now.
Yeah.
But I mean, I have conversations with friends all the time too. In fact, when I launched it, they were like, thank God, because, their kids, one of them was saying that their son said, I want a bike. Mom, Dad, I want a bike. And they're like, okay, how are you going to get it? He's like, I'm going to take your credit card and I'm going to buy it online and it's going to be delivered to our house. So it's like, he's 5.
Which part of me is irritated by that response? The other part of me is like, I mean, he's right. Like if the credit card swipes and it's approved, we could get this thing here by tomorrow midday.
Exactly.
And then you don't even have to put it together. We could hire a TaskRabbit. Like you don't have to do anything for my bike. So part of me's like, homie's right.
He understands how the system works, right? And so he's very intelligent, and he is very right. But it's also like, do we want him to know that yet, right? Like, it reminds me of, I hope it's not, inappropriate to mention the Cosby Show, but like, it reminds me of the episode of the Cosby Show where Cliff says, your mother and I are rich, you have nothing.
Can we talk about that episode? Because that is really real. And as a child, I remember my parents would go back to that scene over and over again. We would ask for things.
Yes.
We would ask for things. So for folks who don't know, there was a show called The Cosby Show that recently has come under a lot of controversy because of the person who created it is a predator. Full stop. And the show, when it was airing, was a symbol of just black people. No, I'm sorry, just people existing who happen to be black.
That's it.
Right? And this show talking about this family with a mom and a dad in the home. Mom's a lawyer, dad's a doctor. They have all these kids, still trying to figure out why we had all these kids, but that's a separate conversation for a different day. Like the Cosbys just stayed having children.
Yeah.
Right?
Also, children who you're like, how do you fit into this family?
Right. I'm like, ooh, nurture versus nature. But okay, we're here. We're here.
We'll suspend reality.
We're here. Okay. And what happened in that scene? I'm going to ask you that. There was a scene, I forgot if it was Theo or
It was
Rudy.
Vanessa.
Vanessa was like, we are rich. So one of their children looked at the parents and said, we are rich. And what did the Huxtable say back?
I think what happened was Vanessa was being teased for being rich or rich. And and she was like, we're rich, blah, blah, blah. Dr. Huxtable was like, no.
Well,
Your mother and I are rich. You have nothing. Nothing.
Yeah.
Which I think was one of the best lines in television history.
It was. And I'm sure if you go on YouTube right now, you could like Google that scene and millions of people have seen that over and over again. But yes, I was told that multiple times. They were like,
Same.
oh yeah, when Vanessa asked, you're poor.
Yeah.
All this is mine.
Exactly.
All this is mine.
The shoes, those are on your feet, those are mine too.
Those are mine. You're welcome. You're welcome.
Exactly.
Yes. Yes.
Exactly. Like I'd be like, I'm my room, like stay out of my room. My parents are like, oh, you mean your room in my house where I pay the mortgage? No, it's my room that I let you live in.
Right. So again, you're welcome.
You're welcome. Exactly.
Yeah. And so I think it's really going back to that, I think the show and that scene and the writers, great writing.
Phenomenal writing.
Found a very clever way to have this conversation with this Vanessa like middle school, early high school age at this time. And it sounds like what you're trying to do is take that and expand it. So the next mini Vanessa is just like, so I want a bike. So who has the best points today?
Exactly. Well, not only that, it's, hey, this is how I've been investing my money that I've been getting from, birthdays, the piggy bank, etc. And therefore I've grown my assets so that mom and dad, I'm not asking you to buy the bike. What I'm asking you for is to help me evaluate which bike is the best for my money that I'm going to go then buy, or you're going to take me to buy. I think that is the conversation we're hoping that children who have been exposed to and engage in Eagle Rock Kids will have, is not, mom, dad, I'm going to take your card and buy it. It's, I've been investing my money and I've been saving for this. And as a result, I am now presenting to you my options so that you can then help advise me on which one I will buy, and you can take me to the store or Amazon or whatever.
Did you ever watch Blackish?
I love Blackish.
I love Blackish, for the record. Love Blackish. Do you remember there was I'm going to have to go back to give you the season and the episode.
Okay.
Where they referenced the Cosby scene of I'm Rich.
Yes,
and the parents
I do.
told Diane, she asked for something and they
Yeah.
were like, oh, no, we're rich. And then Diane was like, no, I'm rich. And you find out that she had been buying Barbie dolls.
Yes,
and they were like, aren't you too old for Barbie dolls? And she was like, I am. But then I put it on eBay. And she was teaching them about investments. And it was like, it was funny because this is like, back when Twitter was the rage and people were on Twitter and they were like, Vanessa has been liberated. Vanessa has been liberated.
Exactly. And that's precisely it,
Yeah.
I mean, even when I was little, like when I get bored, I'd figure out ways to make money. So I'd sell my stickers, I'd sell friendship bracelets, and I didn't know about like investing that money. Like I was using it to then go buy Beanie Babies, which I thought was an investment, but
R.I.P. I still have all my Beanie Babies, Macy. It's okay.
So do I. They're all
in my childhood room, and every time I look at them, I'm just
like,
dang, all that money.
They're at my parents' house.
Yes.
I'm still waiting for the next Beanie Baby boom to happen. Like, hopefully, as we're bringing all this stuff back, there will be a market for our Beanie Babies. Because I've got like 200 of those jokers that like need to be.
I love it. So I think what you're doing is fantastic.
Thank
I
you.
want to thank you for sharing with us how can we get more involved? How can I get my kid signed up? Because girl, she needs it. Okay. She
Yeah,
needs it.
absolutely. So there are a few ways to engage with Eagle Rock Kids and for your children like Adela to become an Eagle Rock Kid.
Yeah.
The first is you can pre-order Ella's Slow and Sweet Lemonade book. It's due out this summer, and it tells the full story about how Ella goes from anticipating lemonade by Wednesday or by Friday to planting the lemon seeds, growing them, creating the lemonade, and then eventually building her own lemonade stand in her business. The second way to engage is by subscribing and purchasing the Ritual Starter Pack. And that includes Ella's story as well as a print version of the next ritual, which will tell the story of Kai and how he learns the importance of taking care of your assets and growing your assets. And then the third way to engage is with the Trailblazer plan. And that is a monthly subscription that is delivered to your home. And it includes a print version of the short story as well as the rituals and activities for you and your family to complete. So I realized not everyone has a printer. And so we decided to pivot to providing that printed experience on luxury paper.
I appreciate it. I do have a printer, but it doesn't work.
You know, like home printers are like so finicky. I don't know
They're
why.
so finicky.
It's so
And I
hard
think
to
like
have a
in
good
my
experience
home,
with
we'll
them.
get a new printer and then we're out of ink. And then we're just like,
There's always something.
we have to go do something. So yeah, so I appreciate the printed handout. I do.
Yeah,
I do.
yeah. So we have those. And then, of course, you know, join our community on Facebook and on LinkedIn. Follow us on Instagram because we're just getting started and we have more stories to tell throughout the year and over the course of time.
I'm excited for this. So
Thank
before
you.
we go, reintroduce yourselves to us. Who are you, Macy?
I am Maci Philitas, and I am a mom, wife, and the founder of Eagle Rock Kids. And I want to say really quickly the importance of me introducing myself as Maci Philitas. For the longest time, I was really holding on to my maiden name, so Maci Peterson Philitas, especially considering the brand I built around my name and just that sense of security that I built around it. And in becoming a mother and reclaiming my new self, I learned that it was also important to kind of say goodbye to Maci Peterson and really embrace Maci Philitas. And so now I proudly introduce myself with my new last name.
Well, I do want to honor, like the Maci Peterson, she was pretty badass.
Thank
And it
you.
sounds like the Maci Philitas can also be equally,
Thank you.
and is equally
Yeah.
as badass. And I want to honor them both. I want to honor
Thank
them
you.
both.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
honor them
Yeah.
both, and I'm so grateful for both versions of who I am and who I've been.
I love it. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Lexi. This was such a joy.
Of course.